Let's talk about how do you rig a Yamamoto Uni. The Uni, right, is this Urchin style bait. I wouldn't call it a dice style bait. I would call it an Urchin style bait, more like the Coike or something like that, right? Like there's the, the dice style baits that are more soft plastic with silicone strands. This Urchin style bait is Elastimor, super stretchy, super tough, high float, right? So when you, whether it's the Coike or the Urchin, think of this as like a 14 or 15 miller Coike with similar arms and a little bit different shape appendages with little knobs, but the thing never stops moving no matter how still you are. So that's what makes it attraction. So one thing you need to know about these before you decide how you're going to rig it, and the difference between this and a dice bait, right, is that it floats, right? Like the original style of this bait was designed as a topwater in the bigger version. You can drop shot this and you can jicka rig it and things, but the most popular way people are doing this is like a Neko rig or a semi-weightless or a strolling rig. But, right, like when you look at this Q-bomb or most of the dice baits, they actually already slowly sink in the water. So it doesn't take as much to sink them. So you need a little weight in these if you're gonna mid-stroll and things like that. And also these are just regular soft plastic. So when you push a weight in them or a hook through them, they tear out pretty easily. And none of them are cheap, but these are $2, $3, $4, $5 a piece. Whereas these more durable Elastimor baits, right? These can be like the Uni is like a $15 bait. So you want to make sure you rig it correctly and you're not going through weights and hooks and baits. And so just want to kind of separate the dice from the Urchin style. We're going to focus on the Uni today. So the Uni comes suspended on this little steel rod in the container. So you can see there that there's a little pin, and you kind of need to come up with a storage, and we'll maybe talk about that in a different video, but it comes off this pin, and there's probably hard to see in this video, but there's a little tiny hole in it, and I think that's an option to rig it. We're going to focus on, think of this as a little round spherical wacky rig. Like pretend all those little arms are wacky rigs and fish this how you would fish a wacky rig or a Neko rig. So that being said, but it's like a Elastimor Senko with tiny little arms, right? So one of the definitely popular ways to do it is to get yourself like a little tungsten Neko rig. If you can find lead, but it's hard to find lead Neko rigs that are the right shape and size and small enough, right? Because you want it to sink, but you don't necessarily want this to be a bottom hopping thing. So like the Arsenal Pagoda in like 3/64th, 1/32nd, I would say 16th at a max, right? So you get these nice little tiny baits, right? And you can get them, you line up that hole, and if you need to get your cheaters out, no shame in that. But you basically get it started in this little hole, and you just kind of work it into the bait. And it's stretchy Elastimor material, right? So you got to kind of work it in there. But the nice thing about these pagodas, they have those nice ridges on the bait, and it really locks that thing in there. So the chances of you throwing that out on a cast or on a fish is pretty low as long as you can keep this bait on your hook. And then now I would say you're going to want, like, you don't need like super special hooks, but you want something like this kind of Neko style O'Shaughnessy hook that's got a pretty big gap, and this is like a number 1 or number 2. And because it is kind of an elastomer plastic, as long as you get a good chunk of it, right, this thing stays on there. It's pretty durable, and you get it up on the shank a little bit and kind of get it like that. So you can, now when you put this in the water, right, this thing is like, when you're strolling it, it sinks. It doesn't sink real fast, right? Like it's kind of like a Senko or a wacky rig, right? And then when you get it in there, you can dead stake it, or you can shake it or stroll it on a fish, whether you're blind or fishing on front facing sonar, right? Like these tentacles are like never stop moving. So that's what it is, with like a 3/64th ounce and a fairly good size hook. So that's definitely rigging option number 1. And if you get this on there like that, it stays on there. As long as you're not trying to just like skin hook it or barely hook it, you should be able to get quite a few fish that way. You can also try to like get it around that Neko or that Neko weight that's in there, but you do typically need some kind of weight. So I've taken the weight out, and so you could fish this on just like a straight hook, and you could feed it through that pre-existing hole and work it out. But like, here's what it would, just on a hook, like a wacky rig, but it pretty much almost floats, barely sinks with just a hook on it. And so if you got any kind of wind, line drag, that thing is basically going to be almost still a top water at that point. So that's why you need a little bit of weight in there. But you don't need a lot because you don't want the thing like falling like a Texas rig usually. So if you want to fish it a little heavier, another idea here is if you wanted to go up to a quarter ounce, so they have all these specialty hooks, but here's like a Bass Tech tungsten free rig drop shot rig with a little ring on it. And it's kind of the skinny cylindrical style. And quarter ounce is probably the absolute biggest you would do. And if you could find this style weight in a smaller, thinner bait, again, you can go right up that same existing hole for rigging. If you get it where you don't want it quite protruding out of the bait, you want it kind of just tucked in there a little bit. So when you come with this style hook, you can get plastic in through the eye of the hook. So you get that rigged up, and now this thing is like, right, so you got a little bit of weight sticking out the bottom of this thing. So if you go a little smaller, it might be even better, but now this thing is like locked in there, and it's through there. This thing is not coming off. Now you're also getting more bite on your hook. So now if you want to fish that, that's going to sink a little faster, and you basically have like a little, right, jicka rig bouncing on the bottom, clicking, making noise. This could be a way, like if you want to fish this a little heavier, a little deeper, now it's not, and you could fish this, definitely you could add a weedless style hook to this instead of this exposed hook, but this is going to be a very robust way to rig this. And then another way that if you're looking at really not losing your bait or giving yourself additional hookups. So I've been playing around with this 2/0, like semi-heavy shank. You don't want a real light wire hook because you want the weight of the hook, right? 2/0, I would say round bed. I don't think you want the EWG version. But again, before you tie the hook on, you take the eye of this hook, right, and you feed that eye of the hook right through that center of that bait where that pin is, where it's already pre-existing. So part of this, you want probably a number 2 hook for this size bait, partially because you want to have some gap, right, for these hooks. But they're kind of covered up by all these appendages. And obviously you don't maybe want to do this around wood or thick brush or things like that. So once you got it on the hook, go ahead and tie this on. So the nice thing is, obviously if you hung this up, you could lose it that way, but there is no way this bait is coming off. And so with the weight of that hook, it actually sinks pretty good with a treble. And you got 3 chances to hook a fish that is at all nipping at that bait, and you still get the same action. So if you're fishing shallow, this could be an option. And obviously you could somehow slide a little tiny Neko or a nail weight down along the shank of that hook as well to add some additional weight, or hang something off the little eye of that hook with a little split ring or something. And obviously we're still learning, but I think it just shows you with this Urchin style bait, it's really left up to your imagination on how you're going to hook it to make sure that you get the most out of these baits, you don't lose them, you have good hookups with your fish, and you get the presentation that you want. So I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below on how you rig it or how you're approaching fish. And if you're looking for any of these hooks, any of these weights, or the Yamamoto Unis yourself, we'll have links down in the description below. If you're just into tackle junkie like myself, check out this video on the screen right here next